Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters in Christ, today I stand before you with a message that is not for the faint of heart, but for the chosen ones who have ears to hear and eyes to see what the Spirit of God is revealing. We are living in prophetic times, and every day that passes is not simply another page in the calendar. It is a divine countdown, a movement toward the fulfillment of promises long spoken. Among the days that lie ahead, there is one date that shines forth with unusual significance, 23 September 2025. This is not a day for fear but for preparation, not for panic but for positioning. It is a call from heaven for the chosen to awaken, align, and step boldly into the will of God. Many will dismiss this day as ordinary, as just another Tuesday. They will rise, eat, work, and sleep without discernment. But the chosen, the true followers of Christ, know that God hides his greatest mysteries in what appears common. He does not shout his secrets to the world, but whispers them to his elect. That is why you, as a chosen Christian, are being stirred even now to pay attention. This date is not random. It carries weight, it carries instruction, and it carries responsibility. 23 September 2025 represents a shift, a prophetic marker where heaven is aligning with earth in a way that will expose, separate, and reveal. Those who have been walking faithfully in the shadows will be brought into the light, and those who have been careless with their calling will feel the shaking. God is not playing with his chosen ones. This is the season where he is demanding readiness, not half-hearted belief, but full surrender. We must understand that being chosen is not about comfort. It is about calling. It is not about fitting into the world's patterns, but about being set apart for God's purposes. The chosen are those who hear his voice in the storm, who remain steadfast when others fall away, who prepare when others ignore. And so, as September 23rd draws near, the Spirit is urging us, get your house in order, trim your lamps, keep your oil full. Because this day will test whether we have been preparing in faith or sleeping in complacency. But let me reassure you, this message is not one of doom. It is a message of hope, promise, and victory for those who belong to Christ. For the chosen, this is not a day of dread but of destiny. It is the beginning of new doors opening, of hidden promises manifesting, of divine alignment bringing clarity to confusion. Yes, the world may tremble, but the chosen will stand. Where others see fear, you will see faith. Where others see endings, you will see beginnings. So I invite you to open your heart and receive this word. Chosen Christians, prepare yourselves, for 23 September 2025 is not just a date, it is an appointment with destiny. A day of divine alignment is not just a concept, it is the reality of God's movement in time and eternity. When heaven aligns with earth, there is a shift in the atmosphere, and those who are sensitive to the Spirit feel it deeply within. The chosen know that what looks like an ordinary day to the world can carry extraordinary significance in the realm of God. September 23, 2025 is such a day when the invisible will become visible, when hidden promises will draw near to manifestation, and when God's order will disrupt the chaos of human plans. Alignment means that heavens will begin to synchronize with the path of your life. And you suddenly realize that everything you endured, every delay, every tear, and every test was preparing you for this moment in time. Alignment is never random. God is a God of order, and he does not waste a single day. He sets times and seasons for his chosen, and when the appointed moment comes, nothing and no one can stop it. Imagine the planets in orbit, each moving on its path. When they align, it is not by accident, but by divine calculation. So it is with your life. Every experience, every setback, every prayer you whispered in the dark, every promise you held onto when nothing seemed to happen, all of it is aligning. September 23, 2025 represents such a cosmic alignment where heaven signals to the earth that the chosen must be in position. Divine alignment requires discernment. The chosen cannot live carelessly in such times. You must tune your spirit like a finely adjusted instrument to catch the vibrations of heaven. God speaks softly, and only those who incline their ears will hear him. If your heart is cluttered with fear, distraction, or compromise, you will miss the moment. That is why this day is not for everyone. It is for those who have prepared their inner temple, for those who are willing to be still and know that he is God. Alignment is not about striving in the flesh, but about resting in the Spirit. It is the recognition that your steps are ordered, your path is guided, and your destiny is secure in His hands. When alignment comes, there is clarity. Where confusion once clouded your mind, suddenly there is direction. Where doors seemed closed, suddenly they swing open. Where you once questioned why God delayed, now you see the wisdom of His timing. Alignment reveals the hidden hand of God working all things together for your good. On September 23, 2025, many chosen ones will look back and realize that what once felt like delay was actually divine strategy. The pain you endured, the silence you experienced, the pruning you went through, it was all preparation for the alignment of heaven and earth in your life. Alignment also brings exposure. When the light of God shines, it not only illuminates the path forward, but also reveals what was hidden in the dark. Masks will fall off, intentions will be exposed. Those who pretended to walk with you but secretly worked against you will be uncovered. Alignment demands separation. God cannot align His chosen with heaven while they are still entangled in unholy alliances. That is why, leading up to this season, many chosen ones experienced loss, betrayal, and rejection. It was not punishment but preparation, because God was removing what could not walk with you into the new alignment. Do not mourn what you lost, for alignment always requires leaving behind what no longer fits the will of God. Another aspect of divine alignment is acceleration. What took years to build in the natural can suddenly shift in moments under the power of God. Alignment compresses time because when heaven moves, earthly resistance collapses. Some of you have been waiting, sowing, and believing for years. You wondered if the promise would ever come to pass, but in the season of alignment, the harvest begins to break forth quickly. What once felt stagnant suddenly surges forward. Where there was delay, there will be speed. On September 23, 2025, the chosen must be ready to move swiftly, for God will open doors that require immediate obedience. Yet alignment is not without testing. When God aligns your life with His will, He also tests your faith, your patience, and your surrender. He asks, will you trust my timing? Will you step into the unknown? Will you let go of your own plan to embrace mine? The chosen must understand that alignment is not always comfortable. Sometimes it demands leaving familiar places, breaking old habits, or releasing control. But those who yield will find themselves walking in a flow of grace they never knew was possible. Alignment is about positioning yourself under the divine current of God's will and letting it carry you into destiny. Alignment also brings divine encounters. God does not align you in isolation. He aligns you with people, places, and opportunities that are part of His plan. On this day, the chosen will begin to meet the ones they were destined to connect with. Covenant relationships will form. Mentors, helpers, and partners will appear at just the right time. Where once you struggled alone, now you will see the strength of divine connections. But beware, alignment also attracts counterfeits. As God brings genuine destiny helpers, the enemy will send distractions that look appealing but are meant to derail. That is why discernment is critical, for not every open door is from God, and not every person who enters your life is aligned with His purpose. In divine alignment, there is also restoration. The years the locusts have eaten, the opportunities that seemed wasted, the strength that was drained, God restores it all in the alignment of His timing. Some of you will see breakthroughs in areas you thought were permanently closed. Relationships will be mended, resources will be released, health will be renewed, and dreams long buried will rise again. Alignment does not mean everything will be perfect, but it does mean that what was broken will begin to make sense in the grand design of God's plan. Finally, alignment points to destiny. Every chosen one has a unique assignment, a calling written before the foundation of the world. On this day, God is reminding His children that their lives are not accidents but carefully orchestrated parts of His eternal plan. Alignment brings you face to face with that reality. You were chosen, set apart, and destined to fulfill His purpose. No power of darkness can stop it. No scheme of man can block it. No fear can erase it. When heaven aligns with earth, Destiny is set in motion, and the chosen must walk boldly into it. A call to spiritual readiness is never casual, it is always urgent. It is heaven's alarm ringing in the soul of the chosen, stirring them out of complacency into holy preparation. The chosen are not allowed the luxury of spiritual sleep when destiny approaches. A day is set, a moment is marked, and when the Spirit says, "Prepare," the wise obey. Readiness is not about external appearances, but about the inner condition of the heart. For God looks not at outward forms, but at the posture of the Spirit. On September 23, 2025, readiness will not be optional. It will be the dividing line between those who move with God's flow and those who are left behind in confusion. Readiness begins with surrender. To be spiritually prepared, one must lay down the weight of self-will and embrace the higher will of God. The chosen cannot enter this day carrying the baggage of pride, bitterness, or compromise. Readiness is trimming the lamp, keeping oil in reserve, and watching with expectation. Many live as though tomorrow is promised, but the chosen understand that each day must be lived in full obedience. Preparation is not for a future day alone. It is a lifestyle, a continual choice to remain aligned with God's Spirit. The chosen are called to be watchmen. A watchman does not sleep when others slumber, but stays awake through the night, keeping his eyes on the horizon. Readiness is vigilance. It is refusing to be lulled by the comforts of this world, knowing that spiritual distractions can rob you of destiny. The enemy's strategy has always been to lull the chosen into complacency, to make them believe there is more time, to whisper that tomorrow is the day to repent, to fast, to pray, to obey. But readiness does not delay, readiness acts now. For on the day of divine visitation, procrastination will be too costly. Readiness demands purity. The Spirit cannot dwell in a vessel polluted by compromise. Many chosen have endured seasons of testing, not to destroy them, but to cleanse them. Fire burns away the impurities of gold, and in the same way, trials purify the faith of the believer. To be spiritually ready is to come forth as gold, tested, refined, and proven faithful. God is calling his chosen to lay aside sins that entangle, to sever ties with unholy alliances, and to stand in the holiness of Christ. On the day of alignment, only the pure in heart will see clearly and discern the hand of God moving. Readiness also demands discipline. Spiritual preparation is not built in a moment of emotion, but in consistent habits of devotion. Prayer must not be an occasional cry, but a daily communion. Fasting cannot be a once-a-year ritual, but a discipline that sharpens sensitivity to the Spirit. Studying the Word is not for casual reading, but for nourishment and strength. The chosen must cultivate these practices now, for they are the oil that keeps the lamp burning bright. When the midnight cry comes, only those with oil in reserve will be able to rise and meet the moment. To be spiritually ready also means to be clothed in faith. Faith is the shield that quenches fiery darts, the anchor that holds steady in storms. The chosen are not called to prepare in fear, but in trust. Fear paralyzes, but faith mobilizes. Readiness is believing that God has already gone ahead, that the outcome is secure, and that nothing will shake the promise he has spoken. Faith transforms preparation from a burden into an act of joyful expectation. On September 23, 2025, those who walk by faith will see what others cannot, and their steps will be steady even when the ground shakes. Spiritual readiness requires detachment from the world. The chosen are in the world, but not of it. They cannot cling to the systems, pleasures, and securities of this age while claiming to be ready for God's move. Readiness is letting go of idols, whether money, recognition, or relationships, that compete with devotion to Christ. The Spirit calls the chosen to travel light, to hold loosely the things of this earth, so that when God says move, there is no hesitation. Many miss divine timing because their hearts are too tied to the world. But those who are detached, free, and surrendered will respond instantly when heaven calls. Another mark of readiness is humility. The chosen cannot be spiritually prepared if they are puffed up in pride. God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Readiness is acknowledging dependence on God, bowing low before His sovereignty, and confessing that without Him we can do nothing. It is the humility to repent quickly, to forgive freely, and to serve willingly. On the day of visitation, humility will be the posture that attracts divine favor, while pride will be exposed and brought low. Readiness also requires perseverance. The chosen cannot prepare for one day and then grow weary. Preparation is endurance, pressing forward even when the wait feels long, even when others mock or doubt. The wise virgins did not tire of waiting. They remained steadfast until the bridegroom arrived. In the same way, the chosen must remain faithful, not turning back, not growing cold, not giving in to discouragement. Perseverance keeps the fire burning even when the night feels endless. The reward is for those who endure to the end. To be spiritually ready is also to be expectant. Expectation sharpens discernment. When you live with expectation, you watch more closely, you pray more fervently, you listen more attentively. Expectation fuels hope, and hope anchors the soul. The chosen must expect God to move, to fulfill promises, to answer prayers, to bring breakthroughs. Expectation creates space for miracles. On September 23, 2025, those who live with expectation will recognize God's hand at work, while others will call it coincidence. Readiness manifests in obedience. What use is preparation if, when the instruction comes, you hesitate? The chosen must be ready to obey without delay, without negotiation, without compromise. Obedience is the final proof of readiness. God does not reveal His secrets to those who will argue with Him, but to those who will act swiftly on His word. Every small act of obedience builds a life prepared for greater assignments. When the call comes, those who practiced obedience in the little things will be ready to handle the weight of destiny. The call to spiritual readiness is not meant to burden, but to awaken. It is God's mercy that warns, His love that prepares, His Spirit that empowers. The chosen are never left alone in this preparation. Grace supplies what human strength cannot, but grace is only effective when received with surrender. Readiness is not about striving harder, but about yielding deeper. It is about letting the Spirit do the work within you, so that when the moment comes, you are not scrambling in fear, but rising in confidence. Separation from the world is one of the most difficult yet necessary demands placed upon the chosen. To be set apart is not merely to be different in appearance, but to live under a higher calling, governed by principles unseen and unappreciated by the majority. The world pulls with its noise, its temptations, its comforts, and its illusions of security. But when God calls a person chosen, He also calls them out of patterns that entangle, out of systems that enslave, out of relationships that drain, and out of environments that dull the spirit. On September 23, 2025, this separation will become more evident, for God Himself will draw a line that cannot be blurred. The chosen must understand that separation is not rejection, it is promotion. God removes His children from the world's flow because He is preparing them for divine alignment. If you remain entangled in the world's ways, you cannot hear heaven's whispers. If your spirit is saturated with worldly noise, you will miss the clarity of God's voice. Separation is the pruning of attachments, the breaking of chains, the loosening of bonds that were never meant to define you. Many have mistaken the loneliness of separation as abandonment, but in reality it is God's invitation to deeper intimacy with Him. Separation exposes idols. The chosen may not bow before golden statues, but idols today are subtler: success, approval, wealth, or even relationships that take the place of God. When God calls you apart, He often removes these idols so that your heart is purified. Some of the losses you faced, the doors that closed, the people who walked away, those were not accidents. They were divine separations. For if God had not removed them, they would have stood in the way of the alignment He is bringing. On this day of reckoning, the chosen will recognize that what they thought was rejection was in fact divine protection. Separation also means a different standard. The world celebrates compromise, but the chosen cannot. The world applauds shortcuts, but the chosen must walk the narrow path. This distinction becomes more visible as time passes. Light cannot mix with darkness. Holiness cannot fellowship with corruption. On September 23, 2025, the chosen will stand out, not because they seek attention, but because they refuse to conform. Their speech will differ, their actions will differ, their choices will differ. They will be misunderstood, even ridiculed, but the Spirit within them will confirm that they are walking the path of truth. To be separated is to carry a mark of distinction. Just as Israel was called to be holy among the nations, so too are the chosen today marked by God's seal. This seal is invisible to human eyes but undeniable in the spirit realm. Darkness recognizes it, opposition fears it, and heaven honors it. When the chosen walk into environments saturated with confusion, their presence alone brings order. When they enter spaces filled with despair, their very existence radiates hope. Separation is not about isolation but about transformation, becoming so filled with God's presence that your life itself becomes a testimony. Yet separation comes with cost. To walk apart means to lose the approval of many. Friends may no longer understand you. Family may question your decisions. Colleagues may mock your convictions. The chosen cannot expect validation from those who live by worldly standards. Jesus himself declared that if the world hated him, it would also hate his followers. The chosen must be prepared to endure rejection, for rejection is proof of distinction, but the reward far outweighs the cost. What you lose in the approval of men, you gain in the favor of God. Separation requires courage. It is easier to blend in, to compromise, to follow the crowd. But the chosen are called to stand when others bow, to speak truth when others stay silent, to walk away when others conform. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear dictate your choices. On the day of separation, courage will distinguish those who stand firm from those who fall back. The chosen must be ready to say, though none go with me, still I will follow. Separation also leads to consecration. Once God removes you from the world's grip, He sanctifies you for His purpose. Your time, your talents, your resources, your very life become instruments in His hands. You no longer live for your own ambitions, but for His glory. Consecration is total surrender. It is saying, Lord, whatever you desire, I am willing. This is not a one-time act, but a daily posture. On September 23, 2025, consecration will be the mark of those truly separated for divine use. Another aspect of separation is clarity of vision. When the noise of the world fades, the voice of God grows louder. The chosen gain insight others cannot see, foresight others cannot imagine, and understanding others cannot comprehend. This is why separation often feels like isolation, but it is actually illumination. God draws you away so that He can reveal mysteries. The chosen who embrace separation will receive revelation that prepares them for the unfolding season. Their steps will be ordered, their path illuminated, their choices aligned with destiny. Separation also positions you for authority. God cannot entrust kingdom authority to those who still crave the world's validation. Authority flows from intimacy, and intimacy comes through separation. When you are no longer bound by worldly systems, you are free to carry heavenly power. Demons recognize the authority of the separated. The atmosphere shifts under their words. Their prayers carry weight. Their declarations bring results. Their lives become conduits of God's power. Authority is the fruit of separation, and it is given only to those who have proven faithful in solitude. To be separated is also to become a sign. The world watches and wonders, why do the chosen walk differently? Why do they not indulge in what others indulge? Why do they remain unshaken in times of chaos? Your separation becomes a testimony. Without preaching a word, your life declares that there is a higher standard, a greater reality, a kingdom not of this world. People may mock, but deep within they are convicted. Your separation draws them to question, and through their questions, God opens doors for truth to be revealed. Separation is ultimately preparation. God never calls you apart just to leave you there. Every wilderness season has a promised land. Every pruning season has a harvest. Every hidden place leads to a revealed purpose. The chosen who endure separation with faith will find themselves standing ready when God says, "Now is the time." On September 23, 2025, the fruit of separation will be visible. Those who yielded will shine. Those who resisted will remain tangled in the world's confusion. The chosen must therefore embrace separation not as punishment but as privilege, for it is the evidence that God has his hand upon them. Prophetic shifts are never quiet. They come with a trembling in the spirit, a stirring in the atmosphere, and a movement that even the unspiritual can sense but cannot explain. A shift is when God alters the direction of time, when he takes what has been stagnant and causes it to move, when he closes doors that no man can open and opens doors that no man can shut. To be chosen in such a season is to stand on the threshold of divine transition, where old cycles break and new seasons begin. September 23, 2025 carries with it the weight of such a prophetic shift, a turning point ordained by heaven, a moment when the chosen will step out of the shadows of delay into the light of new beginnings. Shifts are not accidental, they are intentional. God does not move without purpose, and every shift carries the fingerprints of divine design. When the Spirit announces change, it is not to unsettle, but to align. The chosen must recognize that prophetic shifts often come suddenly, without warning, disrupting the ordinary flow of life. What seemed permanent can dissolve in a day, and what seemed impossible can manifest in a moment. This suddenness is not chaos but divine order, for God works beyond human timelines. On this day, many will testify that years of waiting were overturned by a single shift. Prophetic shifts always begin within. Before circumstances change, the heart must change. God transforms his chosen inwardly before he moves them outwardly. A shift in perspective, a shift in faith, a shift in identity. These are the foundations of external breakthroughs. Some of you have already felt the rumblings of this inner shift, old desires fading, new convictions rising, deeper hunger for God stirring. These are the signs of preparation, for God never introduces a new beginning without first reshaping the vessel that will carry it. New beginnings require the death of the old. The soil of yesterday cannot produce the harvest of tomorrow. God therefore brings endings before he releases beginnings. This is why the chosen have endured seasons of loss, pruning, and closure. Friendships ended, opportunities dried up, doors closed, and familiar places no longer felt like home. It was painful but necessary, for you cannot carry old baggage into a new season. Prophetic shifts demand surrender, and beginnings require release. On September 23, 2025, many will realize that what they thought was destruction was actually preparation for a fresh start. A new beginning is not simply a reset, it is a promotion. When God begins a new work, he does not recycle the past, he creates something greater. The chosen are stepping into higher levels of authority, deeper realms of intimacy, and broader fields of influence. What was once hidden will be revealed. What was once delayed will be accelerated. What was once denied will be granted. New beginnings are not about going back to where you were, but about stepping into where you were always destined to be. Prophetic shifts expose the unprepared. When the current changes, those who remain attached to old seasons are left stranded. The chosen cannot afford to cling to what God has left behind. Spiritual readiness means being willing to let go quickly, to move at the pace of the Spirit, to trust God even when the new path is unfamiliar. Many will struggle on this day because they will try to force the old into the new, but the chosen will discern that the wineskin must change to carry the fresh wine. New beginnings also bring new responsibilities. To whom much is given, much is required. The chosen must not treat fresh opportunities casually. With greater influence comes greater accountability. With new doors comes the need for wisdom. And with promotion comes the burden of stewardship. God does not release new beginnings to entertain his children, but to advance his kingdom. This is why preparation was so critical in the seasons before. Only those who endured the process will be ready to handle the weight of the new. Prophetic shifts reorder priorities. What once consumed your energy will suddenly lose its grip, and what once seemed insignificant will become vital. The chosen will find themselves drawn into prayer like never before, compelled to seek God's presence above all else, and inspired to pursue assignments they once overlooked. The Spirit will rearrange your desires to align with heaven's agenda. This reordering is a sign of a true beginning, for God always gives fresh passion for the fresh path He unveils. New beginnings are marked by restoration. God does not merely start over, He redeems what was lost. The years the locusts devoured, the opportunities stolen, the time wasted, all will be restored in ways that surpass human logic. Some of you will find that what you thought was gone forever suddenly reappears in a greater form. Relationships healed, resources released, dreams resurrected. This is the beauty of prophetic shifts. They not only open the future, but also redeem the past. Prophetic shifts bring divine connections. As seasons change, so do the people assigned to your journey. New beginnings attract new alignments, mentors who pour wisdom, partners who walk beside you, helpers who carry part of the load. God orchestrates these connections to ensure that no chosen one walks into the new season alone. But with every true connection comes the risk of counterfeit ones. The enemy will attempt to send distractions that mimic divine appointments. Discernment is essential, for not everyone who appears in this season is meant to stay. A shift also ushers in acceleration. What once took years will unfold in months. Delays will break, obstacles will crumble, and divine favor will propel the chosen forward. Acceleration is not speed without purpose. It is God redeeming time for His elect. The chosen will look back and wonder how so much changed so quickly. The explanation will not be effort but grace, not striving but alignment. When God shifts, He compresses time so that destiny unfolds at His pace, not man's. New beginnings bring with them a sense of destiny fulfilled. The chosen will feel a weight lifted, a clarity restored, a confidence renewed. It will be as though the pieces of the puzzle suddenly fit together, and what once seemed random now reveals its pattern. Every trial, every delay, every heartbreak will make sense in the light of the new. This sense of destiny is the ultimate fruit of prophetic shifts. It confirms that your steps were ordered, your path was secure, and your journey was never in vain. Above all, prophetic shifts and new beginnings are reminders of God's faithfulness. He who promised is faithful to perform. The chosen are not carried by their own strength, but by the eternal word of God that cannot return void. This is why new beginnings should not be met with fear but with gratitude. The God who brought you this far will not leave you now. The God who closed the old season will guide you through the new. The God who promised the shift will sustain you in the transition. Trust in God's protection and provision is not optional for the chosen. It is essential. In times when the world trembles, when systems fail, when fear grips the hearts of many, the chosen must stand as living testimonies of unwavering faith. Protection and provision are not luxuries in this walk, they are promises, yet these promises only manifest fully when trust becomes the foundation. September 23, 2025 will not be a day of fear for those who trust, but it will be a day of exposure for those who waver between faith and doubt. The difference between trembling in panic and standing in peace will be trust. Protection is the shield of the chosen. It is not the absence of danger, but the assurance that danger cannot prevail. The psalmist declared, "Though 1,000 fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, it will not come near you." This is not poetic imagery, but spiritual reality. God surrounds His children with a hedge that no enemy can penetrate unless He permits it for greater glory. Trust means believing that even in the valley of shadows His rod and staff comfort you. Trust means standing in the fire with the confidence that you will emerge without the smell of smoke. Provision is equally a covenant. The chosen do not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Manna in the wilderness was not an accident. It was a demonstration that heaven's supply does not depend on earthly systems. Ravens fed Elijah, a widow's jar of oil never ran dry, 5 loaves fed multitudes. These are not fairy tales but eternal truths. Trust in provision means refusing to bow to anxiety when resources appear scarce. It means knowing that the one who clothes the lilies and feeds the sparrows will not forget His own. On September 23, 2025, when many are anxious about survival, the chosen will testify of supernatural supply. Trust requires surrender of control. Human instinct wants to plan, to store, to secure by sight, but the chosen live by faith, not by sight. Trust is releasing the illusion of control and resting in the sovereignty of God. It is saying, Lord, I do not know how, but I believe you will. The world relies on what it sees, but the chosen rely on the unseen hand of God. This surrender is not weakness, it is strength. For only those who trust can access the peace that surpasses understanding. Protection and provision often work together. God not only shields his children from harm, but also sustains them in blessing. What good is protection without supply, or provision without safety? The Father provides both. He guards your steps and feeds your soul. He shields you from the arrows of the enemy and sustains you in the midst of famine. The chosen must learn to lean into this dual promise. Fear will try to convince you that you are unprotected. Lack will try to convince you that you are forsaken. But trust silences both lies with the truth of God's word. Trust is tested in seasons of scarcity and danger. It is easy to declare faith when everything looks secure. But when the bank account runs low, when sickness comes unannounced, when storms rage, then the authenticity of trust is revealed. The chosen are being trained for this trust even now. Every trial you faced, every need you endured, every danger you overcame, it was preparation. God was teaching you that he alone is your source, that no weapon formed against you can prosper, and that no lack can override his abundance. The training has not been in vain, for the day is coming when your trust will be your testimony. Trust also means resisting fear. Fear is faith in the wrong direction. It is confidence in the power of darkness rather than the promises of God. The world will tremble on September 23, 2025, because it does not know where its security lies, but the chosen must silence fear with faith. Fear whispers, you will not survive. Faith declares, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Fear says, danger is near. Faith replies, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. Fear magnifies lack, faith magnifies the provider. Trust is the decision to feed faith and starve fear. Provision is not always about abundance of things, it is about sufficiency. God may not always give you everything you want, but he always gives you what you need for the assignment at hand. His provision is precise. He knows what must be supplied for your destiny, and he will not fail to release it. Sometimes he gives abundance, other times just enough. But whether overflowing or daily bread, the message is the same. He is faithful. The chosen must learn to recognize provision even in simplicity, for gratitude multiplies what trust receives. Trusting in protection means believing that God's plan is greater than any enemy's plot. Opposition will rise, weapons will form, and traps will be set, but none can prevail against the chosen who walk under divine covering. Angels encamp around those who fear him. His name is a strong tower, and the righteous run to it and are safe. Safety is not the absence of conflict, but the assurance of victory. Even when battles come, the chosen must trust that God has already written the outcome in their favor. Trust also prepares the chosen for testimony. Every moment of protection and provision becomes a story that glorifies God. Your survival is not just for you, it is a witness to others. When the world sees you unshaken in the midst of shaking, when it sees you provided for in the midst of scarcity, when it sees you protected in the midst of chaos, it cannot deny that God is real. Trust turns personal victories into collective encouragement, for your faith strengthens others to believe. The chosen must understand that provision also comes in the form of divine connections. God provides people, destiny helpers, encouragers, intercessors, who carry what you need in different seasons. Trust means recognizing these provisions and receiving them with humility. Likewise, protection sometimes manifests through divine instructions. Do not go there, wait here, turn aside. Obedience to such nudges is a form of trust, for God often protects by guiding your steps away from unseen danger. Ultimately, trust is rooted in the unchanging nature of God. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. If he protected Noah in the flood, if he provided manna in the wilderness, if he sustained Daniel in the lion's den, he will not fail his chosen now. His record is flawless, His promises are unbreakable. His word is eternal. To trust him is not blind. It is logical faith in a God who has never failed. On September 23, 2025, many will scramble for safety, many will strive for provision, but the chosen will rest. Not because danger does not exist, not because scarcity is impossible, but because trust anchors them in the reality that God is their refuge and their provider. They will walk with peace when others panic, with confidence when others collapse, with faith when others fear. This is the power of trust. It transforms chaos into calm, need into testimony, and uncertainty into assurance.